Located in the middle of the Indian Ocean, the Maldives have a culture that has evolved over 4,000 years through interactions with travelers crossing the ocean. From the very beginning, it has been a point of intermingling of many cultures, whose present legacy is tangibly based on a single history, from linguistic, artistic, maritime, and culinary perspectives, found from Maldives' pre-Islamic times. Although archaeological evidence indicates that the Maldives were inhabited as early as 1500 BC, the archipelago's origin is lost during history's time, which is as much folklore as reality. The Maldives are an independent country consisting of more than 1,190 small coral islands scattered in the Indian Ocean. 200 of them are inhabited. The archipelago is one of the oldest in the world and remained unknown until the first settlers, probably fishermen from the neighboring Indian subcontinent and Sri Lanka, arrived there around the 3rd or 5th century. These fishermen were part of Sinhalese, India, and Malay tribes who firmly practiced Buddhism. The ancient and modern culture of the Maldives was also influenced by the Dravidian, ancient peoples from southern India who created the Harappan civilization. Probably the first Maldivians subscribed to Proto-Hindu belief introduced during the reign of Ashoka the Great, the emperor of the Maurya dynasty of India. During his youth, Ashoka was particularly bold, cruel, and passionate hunter. Bindusara, his father, the second emperor of the Mauryan dynasty, called him to put down a revolt in Ujjain. Ashoka won but was injured in the fighting. Buddhist monks took care of him and he ended up converting to Buddhism and began to embrace its principles. Then he became the third ruler of the empire. Ashoka waged constant warfare against all surrounding regions and conquered the present-day borders of Iran, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Burma, excluding the southern tip of India, Sri Lanka, and the Kingdom of Kalinga. In 262 BCE, he aggressively attacked Kalinga. The morning after his victory, he examined the damage caused by the battle and 250,000 civilians and soldiers killed. He triggered an illness and experienced a religious epiphany. At this point, Ashoka is also remembered for devoting himself to Buddhism and practicing non-violence. He published a series of edicts carved on stone pillars, promising to take care of his people without fearing them, provided them fruit trees, medical care for all people and animals, banned sacrifices and hunting, and made a plea for respect for all living creatures, such as bulls, dogs, squirrels, deer, porcupines, and pigeons. He urged the people to follow a vegetarian diet, banned the practice of burning forests or rubbish, and forbade judicial punishments such as torture, eye removal, and the death penalty. The Maldives around the 7th and 8th centuries began to integrate the Muslim trading system, which included cultures with more relations around the Indian Ocean, such as Yemen, Hormuz, and Oman. The first islanders left no important archaeological traces, but historians believe that houses were built of wood, palm leaves, and other natural materials. These buildings were probably subject to the rapid deterioration due to the high humidity and amount of salt in the air. Several ruins of archaeological remains in certain atolls dating back to the pre-Islamic period testify to the fact that those who settled there arrived while they traveled, either for resupply or shipwrecks. The Maldives archipelago is historically considered an ancient crossroads of trade routes since ancient times. It was a regular stop throughout history for sailors and traders from the branches of Asia, Africa, and Europe. The first written history of the Maldives can be traced back to around 500 BC, when a Sri Lankan prince named Vijaya and his army set sail on a ship to India. Some claim that this ship drifted ashore at Mahila Dvipika. Despite its small size in terms of area and population, the Maldives maintains diplomatic relations with many countries. The Roman soldier and historian Ammianus Marcellinus mentioned in his works that the Maldivians delegation visited ancient Rome in 362 AD and offered gifts to Emperor Julian, while a Chinese historical document records that Maldives kings sent gifts to Chinese Emperor Cao Tsung of Tang dynasty. The legend of how the predominantly Buddhist Maldives converted into Muslim nation remains quite controversial. There are several theories and legends on this point. Someone believed that in the early 12th century, a Persian Islam's preacher from Tabriz arrived in the Maldives and succeeded in converting almost all of the inhabitants to the new religion, proclaiming himself Sultan by the name of Muhammad ul Abdallah and becoming the head of a powerful dynasty that maintained its position of leadership for a long time. While a popular belief holds that Moroccan scholar and traveler named Abu Barakat Yusuf al-Barbari, who arrived there, claimed to have the power to drive away powerful jinn by reading the Quran. Just from the Maldives, an ancient surviving legend claims that the inhabitants of Malay were persecuted by demons, and the local people offered him one girl amount to appease him. Once Abu Barakat offered himself in place of one of the girls to the demon, and after reading the Quran aloud for a whole night, the oppressive spirit disappeared. The venerated tomb of the Moroccan scholar is located in Ukuru Mosque, the oldest mosque in the Maldives, built in 1656. Some claim that the conversion process was not entirely pacific. A document called Dambidu Lomafanu provides information about a violent crackdown on the Buddhist people in the southern atoll of Lamu, an important Buddhist center at that time. The monks were taken to the capital and beheaded, and many stupas and statues were destroyed. The origins of Buddhist history in the Maldives can be found on the island of Istu in the Lamu Atoll. Many Buddhist landmarks have been replaced by mosques are no longer present, but the ruins excavated on the island reveals Buddhist stupas. The discovery came after images and artifacts were uncovered. During an archaeological excavation, the ruins of a former Buddhist monastery dating back to the 7th and 8th centuries and 60 other structures were found at the archaeological site of Kurunina Taraganu on the island of Kashidu in the Kefu Atoll. This is one of the most historically significant sites in the Maldives. Another evidence of the past is the Buddhist temple of Todu, another historical site discovered after careful excavations in 1950. The site is in ruins, but several artifacts have been recovered, such as a Buddha statue, a Roman coin, and other gold and silver objects. Dovemi was the last Buddhist king of the Maldives. He ruled for 25 years, 12 of them as a Buddhist. Then he converted to Islam in 1153. He adopted the Muslim title and the name Sultan Muhammad al-Adil and sent emissaries to different atolls to convert all Maldivians to Islam without any exception. Since then, the Maldives has been a predominantly Islamic country. Maldives' formation as political entity has been dated to the Islam conversion period, making it one of the oldest surviving small states in the world. Unlike other countries, the Maldives was not particularly subject to overt domination by foreign powers, probably due to the difficulties of navigating around the islands and the lack of knowledge of the dangers of the coral reef and shallow lagoons where the big conquerors' ships will be destroyed. Since ancient times, the Maldives have been known for the production of three main local products: the dry fiber of coconuts, which being resistant to salt water was traditionally used to make boats used by the population, and whose export was concentrated in Sindh, China, Yemen, and the Persian Gulf. Then, the Cypriot shell was widely valued and used as a form of currency in the Middle East and in the Indian subcontinent. Due to this extensive use, large quantities of shells were exported from the country to many areas of the world. Foreign traders such as the Arabs bartered rice, spices, and luxury items with the Maldivians in exchange. Numerous finds of Cypriot shell was also been found in pre-Viking graves in Sweden, Birka Harbour, and West Africa. Also, tuna was very popular among traders who stopped over the Maldives. The fish was preserved for a long time and remains a very important foodstuff even today. The well-known Moroccan Islamic traveler and jurist Ibn Battuta went as a part of a mission to India and was loaded with gifts from Sultan of Delhi addressed to the Emperor of China that included 100 thoroughbred horses, 100 slaves, and 15 eunuchs. But during the travel, infidels robbed him of everything. Holding the Sultan's wrath, he sailed and ended up visiting Maldives, where he stayed for 18 months. Once there, he received gold gifts, slaves, and was appointed as a judge. Although he perhaps with malaria, he began teaching Islamic law. The rulers of Malay were looking for a supreme judge and someone who knew Arabic and the laws of the Quran, and were delighted to find a visitors who would meet their needs. They tried hard to convince Ibn Battuta to stay in the Maldives with them, giving him slaves, pearls, and gold jewelry to convince him. He agreed to stay under certain conditions. He began his duties as a judge and tried to establish Islamic law by attempting to change local customs. He ordered that any man who did not attend Friday prayers be whipped. Thieves had their right hand cut off, and he ordered women who he reprimanded for walking around topless to cover themselves. It is said that he had 5 or 6 women with powerful social connections as wives, and that the governor felt weakened. Both of them began to show aversion to each other and soon became enemies. Ibn Battuta decided to leave, divorcing all his wives. During his stay, he wrote that he had many local products from salted meat, honey made from tree sap, coconut milk, fruit juice, rice, fish, poultry, and quails. He wrote, "The inhabitants of the Maldives are all Muslims, pious and upright, sound in faith and sincere in thought. Their bodies are weak. They are not used to fighting, and their armor is prayer. Indian pirates do not plunder or arrest them because they have learned from experience that anyone who takes possession of something of theirs quickly runs into misfortune. There are beautiful mosques on every island, and most of the buildings are made of wood. They are very clean and avoid dirt. Most of them bath twice a day to purify themselves because of the extreme heat and their profit sweating. They make abundant use of perfumed oils such as sandalwood oil." Although the Maldives were by far a quiet and peaceful traders' place, the tranquility of the islands was often disturbed by pirates and the superpowers of the time. In 1558, the archipelago began to fall prey to European colonialists. A group of belligerent Portuguese arrived in Malay and built their fort in the captured capital, but this stay did not last long. Mohammed Takurufano, who was ruler of the Maldives from 1573 to 1585, fought against the Portugal invasion with his brothers for 80 years and removed their regent. The regent was the first Maldivian and the only royalties member to renounce Islam to convert to Christianity, and intended to forcibly convert the inhabitants, with the death penalty for those who refused. After the invasion of the Portuguese, history describes the period as a time when intolerable enormities were committed by the infidel invaders, a time when the sea turned red with Maldivian blood, a time when the people were plunged into despair. To put an end to all this, Takurufano with his three brothers traveled to a different island every night to get their support and consensus to overthrow the illegitimate invaders. With the Maldivian people, he overthrew the Portuguese garrison and gained Maldives independence. The Maldivians gave him the title of Sultan of the Maldives, no longer recognizing the sovereignty of the self-exiled Christian king in Goa. Takurufano was buried in the mausoleum of Muhammad Takurufano al-Awzam in Malay. Today is widely regarded as a national hero. Then, later, in 1600, the Dutch East India Company established its presence in the Maldives, but the Dutch were wise enough to stay out of the local affairs until the British drove the Dutch out in 1796, initially continuing the policy of leaving internal affairs to the Sultan. In 1887, the British established a protectorate over the Maldives, relinquishing sovereignty over the islands in matters of foreign policy, but maintaining self-government from within. The local government continued to be regulated by traditional Muslim institutions in return for the payment of tribute. From 1950 onwards, the political history of the Maldives was largely influenced by the military presence on the islands. The Maldivians began their own rebellion against the British in 1974. The local RAF airport established during the war was destroyed, and the residence of the British administrator was seized. In the 60s, the Maldives began to develop and embrace the globalization's era so rapidly that the traditional architectural heritage gradually began to disappear and be replaced by modern structures. After 1972, tourism in the Maldives began its rise, and the first resorts being built reinterpreted the traditional style. Today, tourism is the largest economic industry and the main source of attraction in the whole world. If you like my videos, subscribe to my channel and leave a like. Thanks for watching.